Game of Thrones left lots of mysteries unanswered, but none more so than the exclusion of House Dayne. House Dayne, who is the subject of like 15 unanswered mysteries from the TV show, from the books, from everything, but they ignored it. So let's talk about it here. Who the hell are House Dayne and why? Why? Just why everything? Now some of you might want to argue with me and say, no, they included House Dayne-ish. We saw Arthur Dayne, the Sword of the Morning, in the flashback where Bran is like three-eyed ravening and he sees his father Ned Stark, like going to save Lyanna, and then there's all those knights in front of the Tower of Joy, and then there's the one in the front who looks really like hot and badass. That's Arthur Dayne. And so they're like, hey, Arthur Dayne was there, yeah, but like there's so much more. So House Dayne is a Dornish house with lots of famous people in the series. You have Arthur Dayne, the Sword of the Morning. He was a Kingsguard who was charged with defending the Tower of Joy, which is where Lyanna Stark was. There's Ashara Dayne, who's another mystery woman, right there with Howland Reed. Ashara Dayne, again, is one of those characters where she is every woman. If there is a mysterious woman in the series, you assume it's Ashara Dayne in disguise, because Ashara Dayne has lots of mystery surrounding her, because she died under mysterious circumstances in the aftermath of mysterious events. Then, of course, there's just the Daynes themselves. House Dayne, who's famous for their sword Dawn. You can see Dawn right here is portrayed as a white blade that was forged out of a fallen star. And there are implications for that out the wazoo, because fallen stars are also important in some of the very old legends pertaining to the Long Night, and so the coming of the others and the White Walkers. So are the Daynes somehow involved in that? The Daynes also have purple eyes, which would be Valyrian, but they're not Valyrians. They're descended from First Men. But First Men, popped over thousands and thousands of years ago. So is it possible that maybe they're related to the Amethyst Empress? There's so much. I'm 2 minutes into the video and I haven't explained anything. I've just denoted what all the mysteries are. Then, of course, there's Darkstar, who we can't forget, old Gerald Dayne over here, who, yes, calls himself Darkstar when Marcella Baratheon asks if he's the Sword of the Morning, which is a common position that the Daynes can sometimes hold. He responds, no, I am Darkstar. I am of the night. What the fuck? The straight bros, they eat that up. Y'all do it. Don't deny it in the comments. Every time I make fun of Darkstar, you guys are in my comments going, what? No, Darkstar's awesome. He calls himself Darkstar. I don't know what else to tell you. This is insane. Hey, it's Ronnie from the future here to say, in an ironic twist, I forgot to talk about Darkstar beyond this point. So if you want a separate video, let me know. Okay, I've teased too many elements. I need to start explaining them. I'm so sorry. Okay, so let's start at the beginning. Like I said, House Dayne, they are Dornishmen. They are from Dorne. They've been there for a while. They are descendant of First Men. And an interesting thing about their house is they have a great sword named Dawn. Dawn is portrayed as a great sword, which is huge, and it is a pale white. Now, it is supposed to be just as strong as Valyrian steel, but it isn't Valyrian steel. It's something else, something weirder. Because per their sigil, Dawn is forged from a fallen star. So supposedly thousands and thousands of years ago, a fallen star hit the earth, the Daynes found it, and they basically decided to build their entire personality around it. They forged the sword Dawn out of it, which is why it looks weird. They took it as their, emblem or their sigil. They named their castle Starfall after it. Lots of stuff. This star, this fallen star, was very important to them, which is interesting because a fallen star is an important thing in another legend, but from the other side of the world. And that, of course, is the legend of the Bloodstone Emperor and the Amethyst Empress. The two individuals whose conflict, or really lack of conflict, the unaliving of this one by this one unjustly, supposedly in legend led to the first Long Night, the first coming of the others, or the White Walkers. If you don't remember the basic details, the gist is that the next person in line for the throne in the Great Empire of the Dawn was the Amethyst Empress. She was the next in line. She was supposed to become the Empress, but she was usurped by her younger brother, the Bloodstone Emperor, up here. Now, the Bloodstone Emperor, of her, led in legend to the first Long Night because it was a blood betrayal. This was an unseemly thing that you cannot kinslay. This is a very, very big rule. And so in the legend, because of that, because this great sin was committed, the Maid of Light, who was the good goddess, turned her back on the world, and the line of the night went ham, unaliving everything. Now, the important thing as it relates to House Dayne, though, is one of the tidbits that you hear about is that the Bloodstone Emperor, one of his many sins that followed, like the big sin, was he started worshipping a stone that had fallen from the sky and, holding it up as something that was to be revered. So what the fuck are y'all on about? What's happening here? So there is the question, are the Daynes somehow related either to the Bloodstone Emperor or possibly the Amethyst Empress? This is a theory that kind of exists out in the world because, in part, there's a theory that the Valyrians, who also had, like the violet amethyst eyes, are descended from the Amethyst Empress. So possibly could it be that the Daynes are like a separate offshoot of that same, like descendants or whatever? Not my most eloquent phrasing, but I'm not re-recording. I'm also realizing I might not have mentioned the Daynes have violet eyes, or at least a lot of them have violet eyes, which again is a weird feature that seemingly has only ever been attributed to Valyrians, and i.e. now in Westeros the Targaryens. Now, when asked about this, George has said that doesn't necessarily mean that they're Valyrian, which I do wonder if that's a cop-out, because, yeah, maybe they're not Valyrians, but are they, descendant from the same people that Valyrians are descended from? Maybe? But we know that out of the weird, mysterious rock, we got a cool sword. A sword that keeps getting mentioned over and over again as, an important thing because it's related to the Sword of the Morning, which is a big position with House Dayne. So typically with ancestral swords, the Lord gets the sword while he's the Lord and then passes it down to the next heir or whatever, and then they get to have it, and then it goes on and on. But the Sword of the Morning and Dawn are different. Not every person gets it. House Dayne is very particular about who gets to, own Dawn and therefore claim the position of Sword of the Morning. That's what it is. If you own Dawn, you are the Sword of the Morning. You basically have to be deemed worthy of it, and so if there isn't a Dayne that is deemed worthy of it, the sword just kind of sits there, which it has now for 17 years, because the last Sword of the Morning was Sir Arthur Dayne, a member of the Kingsguard, who, again, was very close to Rhaegar Targaryen, another mystery person, and we don't know what they were up to, but we do know that it's very weird that Ned Stark was able to beat this man because this was one of the greatest swordsmen who ever lived. Yet somehow he did, and because he's a stand-up guy, he then returned the sword Dawn to Starfall over here, to Ashara Dayne, specifically Arthur Dayne's sister. And you can see her holding it here and looking very forlorn. And then, of course, Ashara Dayne is her own mystery basket because she's involved, but she's not. Her name pops up a ton, but then, we don't know why. And so, kind of like Arthur Dayne and his kind of mysterious death, we have Ashara Dayne, who we know was at the tourney of Harrenhal, which is, the big tourney where Rhaegar first met Lyanna, where all the big players were at, and basically was the inciting incident of Robert's Rebellion, kind of. The baby inciting incident. But it was at this tourney that lots of people have memories of Ashara Dayne. One in particular, Barristan Selmy, remembers that she was dishonored by a Stark. He doesn't say which one, but that's interesting. So, what does that have to do with things? Especially as it relates to, for a while, Jon Snow, his, rumored mother was Ashara Dayne, because supposedly Ned and her might have had a thing, because Ned had a crush. So a lot of people for a while, both in the book series and in real life, speculated that Ashara might be Jon's actual mother, though again, because it's mentioned in the series quite a bit as the rumor, that also is probably just a red herring. But still a mystery, because we know that shortly after she received the sword, she supposedly yeeted herself off of one of the towers here in Starfall, and then, is gone. Except, we don't see any of this. But it's mentioned a lot. So why is it mentioned a lot, unless, maybe it didn't actually happen and she's somewhere? And then, of course, there is the mystery of a House Dayne's word. So remember, all of the major houses, or just houses in general, have, house words. Winter is coming for the Starks, etc., etc. Well, we don't know what the Dayne's words are. And when asked about it, George has said, I can't tell you. If I tell you, it's going to give away a big, important plot point. So, what? So before you ask me, what do you think the words are? I have no idea. I do not know. What could they be that it's going to give away a crazy plot point? I don't know. Probably something about bringing the dawn, because, hey, the dawn after the long night, yada yada. All of this to say there are a lot of unanswered questions with House Dayne. I would like to know them. We don't know them yet. Who knows when we'll know them? And yeah, let me know what you want me to talk about next. Okay, goodbye, y'all.